Welcome to Mastering Your World Through Frequencies. In this episode, there's an introduction, an interview, and most importantly, at the end, a group frequency calibration where the frequency work happens and change is catalyzed. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, this is Karen Cheong, and I'm here with my co-host Tia Sims. Many of you watching this have heard me talk about humanity starting to shift to a higher resonating consciousness. An incredibly important part of that shift is to move into and get comfortable with the new frequency resonance of time. Why? Because time and space are the foundations upon which different realities and consciousness levels are created. Today we talk about what the new resonance of time is, how it's different from what we're used to, and how to make that transition. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part of this episode. The group frequency calibration at the end is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. So let's dive right in. Tia?
So Karen, before we get into the details of this topic, why don't you talk a little bit about the new consciousness that's coming through?
Sure.
So people have better context.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. So if you want a lot of detail around what is the new consciousness, there is episode, I think, 128 or something like this called What is the New Consciousness? So if you're curious about that, check that out. Okay, but sort of taking that whole episode and condensing it. So the new consciousness is simply a much higher resonating frequency resonance that we have the opportunity to enter. So what does that mean? So at this current consciousness level, we're at a certain frequency resonance. It's lower and denser because we have heavier distortion patterns existing in it. Things like oppression and greed and control and abuse are rife in everything, in our systems. You can see it everywhere. Yes, in people, meaning even in us. And as we move into a new consciousness paradigm, okay, which is of a higher vibrating order, higher resonating order, those heavier, denser distortion patterns do not exist in that frequency resonance. They just simply are not there. So in order to enter that new consciousness level, or to be able to integrate those higher level frequencies, you have to, on a personal level, release the heavier distortion patterns out of you so you can integrate those higher resonating frequencies yourself. When you enter into the new consciousness, it's a different experience because you don't have those heavier, denser distortion patterns anymore. So that means that not only can we personally be different with each other, but the way our systems are organized, how we as a collective move forward, all of that shifts because those frequency resonances don't exist. And we have like a stronger, clearer memory of us as oneness. So what we do to another impacts us. Like we're very aware of that. What we do to the earth impacts us. So we're much more aware of that. And also there's a new paradigm of like everything winning, right? So it's not just about, for example, in the old paradigm, for someone to make money, usually you would have to oppress another or like, you know, take something from them to get money from them. You know what I mean? Or
work really
hard,
struggle.
Yeah, or have debt or something like this. But in the new paradigm, it's different. So meaning that both people in the exchange are benefiting and also the greater collective is benefiting. Okay. And we talked about in that episode about this company, I think called New Light or something like this, where they have they have these organisms that eat carbon dioxide, which create global warming. They eat carbon dioxide and they poop out this material that they can that is like a replacement for like plastic and leather. So when you're using like their cutlery or their sunglasses or whatever, you get the benefit as a consumer of the good. The company gets your money. And then the earth benefits because the organisms that have been eating the carbon dioxide to create this thing and pooping out the stuff that it can use, even in the form as the cutlery or the sunglasses of leather, not leather, but kind of replacement leather wallet, they still continue to eat more carbon dioxide and then they break down naturally into nothing. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
That's a perfect example of this new
conscious paradigm, right? Yeah. So everyone's winning. So that's what I mean by the new consciousness. It's really different from what it is that we experience now, and you can see it now in what we're experiencing on the earth, right? This tremendous polarization that's happening. Mm-hmm. So that to me is the difference between the old and the new.
Yeah, just to be clear for some of the listeners, the new consciousness coming in, it's coming in, and we have an opportunity to access it, right? So whether we remove those denser patterns or not, it's still there.
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
So it's accessible to you, and then we all have free will.
Yes.
So we have the choice, if we want to release our distortion patterns, the heaviness, in order to be able to access or integrate, take in these higher level frequencies. Because you'll notice, like, people who are... We've talked about this before in that episode where it's almost like two lenses, right, on the reality. So it's like some people, or a large number, are operating through the old lens, right, the old paradigm, the old heavier consciousness. And then other people are choosing the new lens of the new consciousness, and the experiences are vastly different. Yeah.
And the new consciousness exists even though some are looking only through the new lens.
That's right.
Great. Just want to emphasize.
Yeah. And the higher your frequency resonance is, you can perceive both. I mean, it's not like you're clueless about the other lens.
Sure.
You actually just have the opportunity to see through both if you want to, or, have the experience of both, or be able to see mostly through one lens and acknowledge the other, however you want to do it. But there are people who are really struggling and looking only through the old lens, right? They are having a lot of emotional distress. They're very stressed out. They feel like their worlds are crumbling or falling apart. They're having
very
more
weighed
drama.
down and heavy.
Yes, heavy,
Yeah.
very unburdened.
Yeah.
Yep. And then people who are of a higher frequency resonance moving into the new consciousness, the lens is very different. So you are aware. It's not like we're clueless, okay? It's not like it's not like Pollyanna land. It's not like you put on rose-colored glasses and like nothing, you're not aware of anything that's happening around you. Very aware of the polarization that's happening. And at the same time, it doesn't push you off center. It doesn't take you out of your own frequency resonance. Right? It doesn't impact you as negatively. So it doesn't mean that you don't have compassion. You do. You understand the choices that people are making and the hardness and how challenging it can be. And you personally have the choice to have a very different experience, because it's weird. It's like all these new opportunities line up for you, all this different timing, all this amazing stuff just starts to happen. And you're looking, and even in the challenge, you find like the learning, the opportunity to grow, like all that stuff is different. So it's not heavy at all. It feels much lighter.
Yeah. And so I've experienced this personally as well. And you had mentioned that you can kind of ping through both of these. It's not like the new consciousness doesn't experience challenge, but you may go through a period where time feels like it's like there's never enough, right?
Yeah.
Never enough time.
Yeah.
A lot you have to do in a little amount of time. And then maybe a week later or less, you can swing back into, oh, this is light, this is easy, big S self kind of thing, right?
Yeah, where you're in flow.
Yes.
And what Tia means by big S self is the self associated with spirit. So meaning you have like a bigger perspective that's broader, that's connected to that yourself is infinite, indestructible consciousness, and you're not getting bogged down only in the small S self of the ego mind. So you feel, and so you have that perspective more. And then as you enter the flow of the new consciousness, things just line up. And speaking of time, since this is what the topic is, so the new frequency resonance of time is associated with the new consciousness because it's the building block of all consciousnesses, okay? So this consciousness level, the one that we're leaving, and the one that's becoming available to us, should you choose it, is space and time, okay? And when you have a new consciousness come in like this, the building block of time changes. The nature of time is different. So as a result, our experience is different. So I just want to talk about the new frequency resonance of time. So in the old, you talked about scarcity a lot because it's true. In the old resonance of time, there's never enough time. There's never enough. There's never enough. That's like runs through that consciousness level. Yep. In the new resonance of time, it's much more buoyant. It's much lighter. It's not as dense. So you can get a lot more done in the same amount of time. It feels more spacious and more easy. It's not like there's lack of work. I mean, you are going to work, but it doesn't feel as heavy because things like line up somehow magically. and opportunities open.
Yes, things come to you without you having to work so hard to find the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. So it almost feels like this magical synchronicity. And yes, there's effort in following that, but yet it somehow just becomes this amazing, like, little adventure that you're on, you know?
Yeah, and there's almost a trust element, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, totally.
Because the more you see things lining up, the more it's like, okay, why am I going to worry or struggle? I'm going to keep trusting because it keeps working.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you're also more in that surrender space, that surrender from strength space, which, like, that and trust are intertwined, so that you can be more open. So, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that, and I'm glad you did. It's just like, you know, trust, surrender, the new consciousness, they're all interwoven, right? So the more you surrender, the more you're in trust, the higher frequency resonance is, the more you can be in the new consciousness, which then obviously buoys all of that, right? So it's like this spiral of awesome.
Very nice, very nice. So what would you say would be some advice for someone who's kind of going between each lens right now?
Yeah. So when you go through into the new frequency resonance of time, in order to access it, you have to, like, purge out the density of old distortion patterns that exist at the old frequency resonance of time, because they can't exist at the same. It's like two ships passing in the night. Like if you're up here vibrating up here, you can't have these distortion patterns. They actually can't coexist.
Yeah.
They're different. So in order to access this higher level, you have to get rid of this stuff that keeps us down in this level of resonance to be able to access up here. Yes. So I'm getting to your question, but for some people, they're really very, very tired right now. And it's physically exhausting, because your physical body is purging out all of these distortion patterns, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. It's like, to process out the frequency distortion patterns for some of you is like, it's really tiring. And so just know that. For others, they'll see a lot of their old distortion patterns, like especially around scarcity of time.
Right.
Or scarcity at all, because scarcity of time is so entrenched in us. So scarcity at all of, like, money, of love, of being seen, of being valued, all that scarcity stuff is going to trigger, okay, because it's all intertwined. So all that stuff might come up, or things around struggle, like you mentioned before, right? Like struggle, or suffering, or spirit debt, which is another thing that you and I have talked about in other episodes as well. So that will rear its head, because why? Because it's kind of like you're a lemon being squished, right? So you have, like, if you know those lemon juicer things, right, with the tray and the little thingy. So if you put a lemon on it, you squish out all the juice. That's kind of like what's happening. But you're wringing out your distortion patterns so that you can be in the higher resonance of time. So that's I'm getting to your question, which is, how do I deal with pinging between the two?
Yeah.
So just to your point, you are going to ping between the two.
Yeah.
Like, most people aren't just, like, in the new resonance of time and, like, they're in their full glory, like, all the time, at least not that I'm aware of, right? We usually go up and down. So if that is happening, know that you are probably purging out some old stuff that you have to in order to get to the higher resonance. To give yourself sleep, okay? Because a lot of us will process a lot of our distortions through sleep. To acknowledge that probably you're cranky right now. Okay, so sometimes you don't have to be cranky at anything particular. Sometimes you just feel cranky, and it's sometimes because you're being squeezed, meaning all your distortion patterns are coming out, and you don't need to know what they all are. You know what I mean? You don't need to, like, name all what they all are. You're just like, "Gah!" It just feels nasty. So know that that's happening, to be aware of that, to tell other people around you that is happening. Because you are. Exactly. Warning, I am cranky. I apologize in advance, right? I actually said that to Chris about a week or a half ago. I was like, oh God, I'm just so cranky, and I'm sorry. I will try to mend that.
Yeah, that's good. Communicating is good.
Yeah, exactly. That self-care is so important. Yeah. So for me, I will schedule more acupuncture. I'll schedule more chiropractic. I will schedule whatever it is that helps me. And then the other thing is to do the work more, actually. To do more frequency work, because that's the only thing that's going to move you up. So that type of thing.
Probably the confirm the removal is great. I've shared that with a bunch of people where they're like, I'm really in it right now. I'm like, do this. And then they're like, purchased, done. Wow, I'm really hungry. I'm going to go eat now.
Exactly.
So it's like an immediate shift. So when you're in it, I know for me, I just had an experience where I was really in it, and I just went for a walk, and I literally just yelled, help me, like higher self, or just help me. I need to get through this. So that's that. idea of I'm still connected to my big S self, even though I feel so heavy and in it.
Yeah.
You know, and I came back from my walk and I had messages on my phone from people sending loving, really, really loving, like special things to me, reminding me of my brilliance, you know, in their own words. So that's a good reminder. Even through the struggle, you're still connected. Keep trusting. Yeah. Take it easy. Self-care, like you said.
Exactly. Yeah. And then also, you know, and despite the struggle, as you said, the more you do this work, the more you connect with your big S self, the more, even in your struggle, you're aware that something greater is unfolding. Yeah. And there's a trust and a surrender in that, and a beauty to it as well. So even in the like gnarly humanness of it, there is, and I'm not saying it's all glory, okay? Because it's like you're in it, but there's this awareness of like, okay, it's just passing through, and it is unfolding exactly as it's meant to. Okay, you know, it's like take that breath, and as you say, that trust and surrender from strength is really key. And even if you don't know what the end is, you know, like where you're moving to, that's part of the surrender also. You're just like, I'm just going to keep being present in this. Like, I'm not going to distract out of it. I'm not going to just, become unconscious in this. I'm going to hold and keep being aware and have personal accountability and keep rising in this.
That's true growth right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed while you're doing the work regularly, you'll come to situations where you can choose the old you or the new you. Yeah. And if you choose the new you, you just, you just elevate and it stays. Yeah. And then you'll get another example. And, okay, maybe you choose the old you, and it's not like you go backwards, but it's like the free will is there in every moment. Yeah. To just try and keep choosing the new you. Yeah. Like the higher
resonating version of you. Yeah. And really the old you, at some point, it depends on the frequency resonance of the person. But at some point, when you choose the old you, you're not doing so at the beginning, sorry, I'm just going to back up. At the very beginning, we will choose the old us because there's so many distortion patterns still to release. So it's harder to choose the new you. Sure. You want to choose a new you, but it's hard because you're like, oh God, I got all these distortion patterns, and they really will sort of like take over in a way. You know what I mean? There's less free will. But as you liberate yourself and as you get to a certain point in your frequency resonance, the choice to move into the new you becomes more available. And if you choose the old you, it's not out of punishment. It's for contrast. You're just like, oh, okay, I just chose that. This kind of sucks, actually.
That didn't really work out for me well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I had that other choice. That probably would have been better.
And actually, that's a good point. As you're doing the work, when you get to a moment like that where you kind of stumble backwards, if you will, the kind of rebound is quicker. Yeah. And I'm saying this so some listeners might be like, man, that just sounds amazing. Yeah. I'm speaking from real time, like someone who's doing this, and I'm saying it works. Like, I'm not making it up. And she's not just talking about only her. You know, this is a real thing. So just stick with it, I would say.
Yeah. And exactly. Because here's the thing. I mean, like, it's funny with frequency work, is when you're going through that hard period, through the fire. When I was going through it, I mean, I still go through it. It's just different levels. But initially, especially when it was hard, I was like, man, I could let go here and stop right now. But then I'm going to be here. Oh, God. I don't want to stay here.
I'm going to keep going.
I'm going to keep going. Yeah. And so I had a friend who said this to me, and she's like, the only way is through. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. The only way is through. Like, all right.
Oh, that's good. Well, I think all in all, like, this new resonance of time is something to be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can tap into it, and then eventually I think we'll all kind of stay in it.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Once you're resonating high enough to be able to sustain.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's just kind of, it complements this idea of remembering our brilliance.
Oh, totally.
Right? Yeah. Because there's a lot of distraction out there. Yeah. And I think it's important to, even through the struggle and the good times and whatever, is to remember. Isn't that kind of the point of everything?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, as much as you and I are discussing this, and it's a good conversation, you have to remember the work is in the frequency work. You can talk about this all day long and it doesn't matter. You have to do the frequency work to get into that, to be able to release the distortions, to be able to integrate that new frequency resonance of time. So after this, as always, there's the free GFC. As support, I'm giving a special extended GFC just on the new frequency resonance of time. So look for that. You can catch it either in the upcoming events or if it's past, in the products section of the website. It's really important because, again, this is not about intellectual understanding, which is helpful, but the only way to integrate is actually to do with the frequency work.
Yeah, you've got to shift your resonance.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
For those of you who are new, we're just about to start the GFC. This is the most important part of this episode because it's where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. So I invite you to settle in and get comfortable. You can sit, stand, or lie down, or if you prefer to walk around slowly, you could even do that too. If during the GFC you find that you start falling asleep, even if you didn't feel tired when you started, just let yourself drift off. That just means that the frequencies are really high and it's more efficient for you to be asleep to integrate them. If this happens, it's good to listen to the GFC portion again a few times until you can stay awake for the whole thing. That's how you'll know you've integrated those higher resonating frequencies. Because I'm working on the frequency level, these GFCs are not like regular meditations, and many people find they go into varying degrees of altered state. If you happen to be listening to the audio version of this episode, please definitely do not drive while listening to this. Okay, here we go. This is the group frequency calibration for the new frequency resonance of time. So this is an intro GFC to help prepare you to start to release the heavier, denser patterns, which prevent you from getting into the new frequency resonance of time. There is a very special, longer GFC that I'm giving. So if you, depending on when you listen to this, it's either available coming up or in the products section of the website. Okay. Becoming aware of your body. And as you become aware of your body, becoming aware of your back body from your waist down to your heels. So that would be your back, butt, backs of the thighs. Okay, please include your tailbone, backs of the knees, backs of the calves, backs of the ankles, to the backs of your heels. Okay. Now, for those of you who are more experienced, becoming aware of more of the details. So noticing, depending on how you're sitting or lying down, or perhaps even walking, what is happening in the back part of your body. What weight is being borne on which part of the back of your body? How much? How much spread is there in your skin and your flesh as the weight is supported by whatever is supporting you? Noticing if there is any tension in this part of the body. We're very forward-oriented people because that's the way our eyes point. And we often are very unaware in our modern culture of our back bodies. Cultivating an awareness where there is very little helps us to cultivate awareness generally, and also of our distortions, okay? Seeing what we don't normally, and also helps us to come further into the body. Becoming aware of the hollow of your throat and your collarbones.
So noticing this part of the body. And again, depending on how experienced you are, noticing details like, do you feel air moving against this part of your body? Perhaps there's sweat or fabric, or noticing if it's warm or cold. Just noticing this part of the body. Yep. And then when you're ready, becoming aware of your breath. And as you become aware of your breath, just noticing it at first. Without changing it, just notice it. And then, after a couple of breaths of just noticing it, allowing your breath to become more long, to take up more space, to expand deep into your body. Noticing in the expansion, if you're only expanding in one direction, meaning, for example, into your chest, perhaps into your back, or if you can expand into all directions, front, back, sides, and the spaces in between. Good. Yeah. Good, and now notice your surroundings. Noticing the details of the surroundings. And pick a sense. Okay, so if you are more advanced or have been working at this kind of work for longer, you can become aware of all five senses, okay, as you soften your awareness, so that you're not tracking anything mentally, you're just aware of these layers of sensory information on all your five sense levels. And if you're newer, you're going to bring your attention to one sense and focus on that one sense. So, especially if this is your first time, all right? So only for those who are more advanced or more experienced should do the first thing I mentioned. Right? For those of you who are new, bring your attention to the sounds that you hear, both on my end and on your end, and pay attention to how much you can pick up in terms of sound. There's so much textural soundscape around us that we don't notice because it becomes sort of like a white noise. So, for example, noticing the blades of a fan pushing the air, okay, that has a slight sound. Noticing the whirring of a fridge, the hum of a computer. Noticing the traffic outside. Okay, or perhaps the wind as it goes through a fence or through the leaves of trees. Noticing the layers of sound. Good. And now please triangulate. So for those of you who are new, triangulation is when you become aware. So you'll need to blink your eyes open, okay, as a note. So blinking your eyes open, you'll become aware of 3 inanimate objects in the space around you. What those inanimate objects are is not important. You're simply going to notice the inanimate object and the distance between that object and you. So for example, if the nightstand is about 4 foot away from you, you're going to notice that the nightstand is that distance, and then feel the distance between the nightstand and you. And you're going to do the same thing for objects B and C. And you'll find as you do this with each object that your sense of where you are in space somehow crystallizes, becomes more present for you and more in focus. This is extremely important because, as we mentioned in the video, the coordinates of this consciousness level and the next are based on the foundation of space and time. So knowing where you are in space helps you to adjust to the new frequency resonance of time much more quickly and or be in the present moment of linear time in this time. Both extremely beneficial. For those of you who are faster and have already triangulated, bringing your attention now, please, to the xiphoid process, which is right at the base of the sternum. So the sternum is that big, thick bone in the center of your chest where your ribs meet in front of your body. If you trace your sternum along its length to the base of the bone where it becomes flesh, when you, right there at the base, when you press in on it, it's a little tender. That is your xiphoid process. So bringing your attention there, breathing normally, we're going to take one nice big breath together. So you're going to please inhale, holding your breath at the top of your breath for a count of 5. And then when you're ready, releasing all the air out of your lungs with the speed and the intensity that you prefer, holding your breath out also for a count of 5. And while we wait for everyone to finish that one long deep breath, we also are waiting for the mastermind to coalesce and to become coherent. Whilst we do that, please note that I am working on you at the group and subgroup level, and that I often will work in silence, especially if I'm working with really high frequencies, because it does not benefit you for me to make physical noise, because at that point I have to lower the frequency resonance. So that does not benefit you. Also, I do make noise, so you might hear me hum or yawn or exhale sharply, and that's just how I release often what are lower, denser, or sometimes stickier distortion patterns. If I say something that you resonate with, likely it's yours. And if I say something that you really resist, it's also likely yours. So I invite you to remain open and to explore further. Mm-hmm. Good. So now that the mastermind has become coherent, keeping your attention on the xiphoid process, please ask yourself the following question to yourself. How can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? That question again is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And as you ask yourself that question, please imagine, sense, feel, or become aware of the space at the very center of your body. And as you become aware of this space, becoming aware of or imagining a brilliance at its very center, And as you become aware of this brilliance, it starts to expand outwards through all of your cells, out through your organs, your bones, your muscles, and your flesh, radiating out through the pores of your skin into the space between your physical body and the outer perimeter of your spirit body, which is a sphere at arm's length all around you. Noticing the brilliance within the sphere. And now please become aware of the space all around the sphere. And as you become aware of this infinite space, I'm working on you at spirit level to increase your frequency resonance. How high your frequency resonance is influences everything from what your life looks like to how you perceive it, how many distortions you can clear, and the speed of your integration. So this is one of the most important things we do together. Good. Becoming aware of your sternum, that big thick bone in the center of your chest where your ribs meet in front of your body. Becoming aware specifically of the spaces in between your sternum. So the first thing we're going to do is release this distortion pattern with regards to the attachment to the existing frequency resonance of time. Okay. So depending on the subgroup that you're in, you're either just attached because it's familiar. Some of you are hanging on to it because you're afraid of the unknown. Some of you resist letting it go because you don't like time, generally speaking, and you kind of get this form of time and a new one, well, you don't really want to deal with it. It's a much smaller group of you. Breathing deeply as you're aware of these spaces. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good. Becoming aware, please, of the space behind your forehead. So go into your brain as far as you'd like. Wherever intuitively you stop, that's great. Okay, so this has to do with scarcity of time. Right? So feeling like you're going to run out of it, that you're not in alignment with it, that you miss opportunities all the time because you're not quite in the right place at the right time. You can't get enough done. Okay, mixed in with this, also there's a fear of death, right? Which is the ultimate end of time in the physical body. There's a lot of fear around that kind of scarcity of time. Mm-hmm. 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 Good. Yeah. 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 Bring your attention now, please, to the center of your heart space and the center of your solar plexus. We're going to bring you into the 0 point of space and time. You can't really do this enough. It's a constant refinement. So even for those of you who are more experienced. Still helpful. Yeah. Yeah, that was pulling you to the 0 point of space. Now pulling you into the 0 point of time, the present moment of linear time. There we go. Mm-hmm. Good. Bringing your attention, please, now to your xiphoid process, about 3 inches just beneath it, or 7 centimeters just beneath it, towards the belly button, clearing out, resetting the pain body. Good.
This brings us to the end of this session. I look forward to working with you on the next GFC. It's my sincere hope that you benefit profoundly from this series, which is why I spend so much of my time and personal resources creating these as my gift to the world. If the topic of this GFC resonates with you, it's very likely that more work than can be provided in this one GFC is needed to clear or loosen deeply held distortion patterns in areas that are sticky. Because these patterns are like layers of an onion, usually there are multiple layers to individual topics. Depending on how much of a challenge this topic is for you, it may make sense for you to go deeper than what this one session allows. If you feel this is the case for you, please visit sphericalluminosity.com for more targeted support.